October 17th, 1944. Somewhere near Bastogne, Belgium, the grinding metal tracks of a severely damaged M4A3E8 Sherman tank left deep gouges in the frosted earth as it limped behind Allied lines. Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell of the 761st Tank Battalion, Patton's Panthers, had survived what should have been a fatal encounter with a German Panther tank at point-blank range. Her Sherman, bearing the battalion code Hellcat with a snarling feline painted on its turret, had not only survived but destroyed its theoretically superior German opponent in a duel that defied conventional armoured warfare wisdom of the time. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Mitchell's tank, serial number 3073294, an M4A3E8 Easy 8 variant. Equipped with the new high-velocity 76mm gun and experimental HVAP, high-velocity armor-piercing ammunition, was about to become the subject of intense German technical evaluation. Within days, this particular Sherman would be transported to the Wehrmacht's primary testing ground at Kummersdorf, located approximately 25 kilometers south of Berlin, where it would undergo comprehensive analysis by Germany's foremost tank designers and armor experts. The tank would emerge in German hands bearing Wehrmacht evaluation markings, its olive drab paint partially covered with ambush camouflage patterns for testing purposes, a stark white cross emblazoned on its sides for identification during German field trials. Following standard Wehrmacht procedure for captured equipment, this Sherman was destined for service with one of Germany's most specialized and secretive units, Panzer Auswertungsabteilung 11, where it would force German tankers and armor theorists to confront an unsettling reality about American technological advancements, industrial capacity, and the increasingly precarious position of Germany's vaunted Panzer forces. The story of how captured American tanks became revelations for the Wehrmacht begins not with Mitchell's fateful engagement near Bastogne, but with the escalating armoured warfare across Europe and the desperate need for accurate intelligence about Allied armoured capabilities that went beyond fragmentary after-action reports from increasingly inexperienced Panzer crews. By late 1944, the Wehrmacht faced a strategic crisis in armoured warfare that threatened to overwhelm German defences, despite the fearsome reputation of vehicles like the Panther and Tiger. American tank formations were penetrating deeper into Reich territory, with each passing week, equipped with new variants and ammunition types whose true capabilities remained partially unknown to German commanders, who had to make tactical and strategic decisions based on incomplete information. After-action reports from Panzer crews provided contradictory accounts of Sherman capabilities. Some described the American tanks as flimsy Ronson lighters that burst into flames when hit, while others reported shocking incidents of German armor being penetrated at ranges previously considered safe, particularly when facing the newer 76mm armed Shermans. These conflicting accounts reflected the chaos of battlefield encounters rather than systematic evaluation under controlled conditions. Oberst Wilhelm Müller, an experienced Panzer officer with extensive Eastern Front experience, recognized that German armored units needed more than scattered combat reports to counter the Allied armored threat effectively. They required hands-on experience with captured American tanks, structured testing programs, and systematic evaluation to discover strengths and weaknesses through direct observation rather than battlefield glimpses. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. In early 1944, following direct orders from Generaloberst Heinz Guderian, Inspector General of Armoured Troops Müller, formed what would become Panzer Auswertungsabteilung 1 Tank Evaluation Battalion 11, officially designated as a specialized research unit under the Heereswaffenamt, the Army Weapons Office. This specialized unit received all repairable captured Allied tanks that German recovery teams could salvage from battlefields across Western Europe. The unit's mission extended well beyond static testing at secure facilities. Müller organized traveling demonstrations where captured tanks would visit operational Panzer units across Germany and occupied territories, allowing frontline crews to examine these machines up close, observe their performance, and in select cases, participate in comparative field trials against them. The program addressed a fundamental problem in tank crew training that had become increasingly critical as the war progressed and experienced crew losses mounted. German tank crews trained primarily against their own vehicles, developing tactics optimized for fighting opponents who operated like Germans, using similar vehicles with comparable characteristics, and employing tactical doctrines that emerged from shared training foundations. This created dangerous blind spots when engaging Allied crews whose vehicles possessed markedly different performance characteristics, especially regarding firepower, mobility, and mechanical reliability. The recovery operation for Allied tanks had become highly systematized by 1944, with specialized German Panzer recovery tank units operating across battle zones. These teams worked with remarkable efficiency to secure disabled tanks, assess damage, and transport repairable vehicles to evaluation facilities before they could be recaptured. The organizational structure reflected German military thoroughness, even as resources grew increasingly scarce. With thousands of Allied tanks deployed across the Western Front, mechanical failures, battle damage, and tactical mishaps resulted in numerous vehicles being abandoned in German-controlled territory. Not all were destroyed beyond repair or rendered completely inoperable. Some crews, facing overwhelming enemy fire or mechanical breakdown, were forced to abandon largely intact vehicles that could be recovered by German forces. Mitchell's M4A3E8 fell into this category of recoverable captures. The Sherman had sustained damage during fierce fighting near Bastogne, where it had engaged and destroyed a Panther at remarkably close range using the new HVAP ammunition. The engagement had left the Sherman with a damaged track assembly and minor penetrations to the rear engine compartment, but the main armament, turret systems, and drivetrain remained largely intact. German recovery teams reached the abandoned Sherman within hours, quickly assessing it as a high-priority capture due to its newer model variant and apparent ammunition type that had demonstrated extraordinary penetration capability against German armor. The tank was carefully loaded onto a heavy transport and sent to Kummersdorf under heavy guard, its significance already apparent to the recovery team commander, who had seen the destroyed Panther nearby with a clean penetration through its frontal armor, something considered nearly impossible with standard American 76mm ammunition. At Kummersdorf, the testing center, which had served as the Wehrmacht's primary facility for evaluating armored vehicles since before the war, experienced technicians and engineers worked systematically to return the Sherman to operational status. The facility included extensive workshops equipped with specialized tools, comprehensive test ranges, and staff with considerable experience in reverse engineering captured equipment. Technicians at Kummersdorf possessed remarkable skill in repairing Allied vehicles, despite lacking original technical manuals, factory specifications, or genuine spare parts, manufactured to original tolerances. The repair process for Mitchell's Sherman required substantial ingenuity and resourcefulness that demonstrated both German technical competence and the increasing challenges of working with dwindling resources. The repair team cannibalized components from other damaged Shermans recovered across Europe, building an inventory of parts that could be matched and fitted to create one fully operational vehicle from multiple damaged machines. The Ford GAA V8 gasoline engine, producing 500 horsepower and giving the E8 variant its superior mobility, underwent detailed inspection and necessary repairs using replacement parts obtained from multiple sources. This engine represented a significant achievement of American industrial might, a purpose-designed tank power plant that could be mass-produced with consistent quality, delivering excellent power-to-weight ratio and reasonable reliability under battlefield conditions. German engineers noted with particular interest how the engine design prioritized ease of maintenance and replacement, with major components accessible through large access panels that could be opened quickly with basic tools. The 76mm M4A3E8 gun mounted on the Sherman underwent particularly intense scrutiny. This weapon, with its higher muzzle velocity than the earlier 75mm gun, represented a significant upgrade in American tank firepower. The gun's breech mechanism, recoil system, and stabilization components were carefully examined for wear patterns, design features, and operational characteristics that might reveal tactical implications for German forces facing these weapons. Of greatest interest were several rounds of the experimental HVAP ammunition recovered from the tank's ready rack. These projectiles, with their tungsten carbide cores and lightweight bodies, represented a technological leap in anti-armor capability that had clearly demonstrated devastating effectiveness against German armor. The ammunition utilized a principle similar to Germany's own Panzer Granit 40 with tungsten core, but manufactured with what appeared to be more abundant materials, suggesting America's superior access to strategic resources. After weeks of meticulous work by skilled technicians working with limited resources and improvised solutions, the Sherman was declared ready for initial test operations. German test drivers approached their first experiences with captured American armor with professional curiosity mixed with considerable skepticism born from years of propaganda. Official information had consistently portrayed American tanks as crude, mass-produced machines that prioritized quantity over quality, emphasizing manufacturing simplicity rather than sophisticated engineering and combat effectiveness. The prevailing view among many German tank crews, reinforced by official communications, held that American engineering focused on producing adequate numbers of acceptable tanks rather than pursuing the engineering excellence that characterized German designs. These comfortable assumptions began dissolving rapidly the moment experienced German test drivers climbed into the Sherman's driver's compartment and experienced firsthand what American designers and engineers had actually achieved through thoughtful design, systematic engineering, and meticulous attention to crew ergonomics and combat effectiveness. The driver's position immediately impressed German operators familiar with the cramped confines of Panzer IV and even Panther tanks. The Sherman provided substantially better visibility through a combination of direct vision blocks and a periscope system that allowed the driver to operate with the hatch closed under combat conditions while maintaining good situational awareness. Controls were logically arranged and positioned for easy operation, even during extended combat operations. The steering levers and transmission controls required noticeably less physical effort than comparable German systems, reducing driver fatigue during long movements. The driver's seat offered better adjustment and comfort than German tanks, an important consideration during extended operations where crew fatigue directly impacted combat effectiveness. But the true revelation came when German test drivers advanced the throttle and felt the Ford GAA engine respond with smooth, immediate power delivery. The power-to-weight ratio of the E8 Sherman exceeded that of standard Panzer IVs and even approached the Panther in some performance aspects, delivering mobility that seemed almost impossible for a medium tank of its size and weight. The Sherman accelerated rapidly from standstill, demonstrating excellent torque characteristics that enabled it to navigate difficult terrain more effectively than German test drivers anticipated. The torsion bar suspension system, while not as sophisticated as the German interleaved wheel designs, provided surprisingly good ride quality over rough ground, allowing higher sustained speeds across country than comparable German tanks could maintain. German test drivers systematically evaluated the Sherman's performance envelope through carefully planned test programs, pushing the vehicle through standardized mobility trials specifically designed to reveal strengths, limitations, and handling characteristics under various terrain conditions. Obstacle crossing capability impressed them considerably, with the Sherman demonstrating excellent trench crossing, vertical obstacle climbing, and slope navigation characteristics. The Sherman's automotive reliability particularly concerned German evaluators and generated significant discussion about tactical implications. During extended testing at Kummersdorf, the Sherman demonstrated remarkable mechanical reliability, operating for days without significant maintenance requirements beyond basic fluid checks and minor adjustments. When maintenance was required, the design clearly prioritized accessibility and speed of repair. Large, easily opened access panels provided direct entry to critical components. The entire power pack, engine, transmission, and cooling system could be removed and replaced as a single unit using appropriate equipment, a feature that German maintenance officers noted with particular interest. This design philosophy directly translated to higher operational availability, allowing American units to keep more tanks in combat while German forces struggled with increasingly complex maintenance requirements. The true shock came when German armor experts examined the captured HVAP ammunition and conducted penetration tests against captured German armor. The 76mm HVAP round, designated M93, contained a tungsten carbide penetrator encased in a lightweight aluminum body with a steel jacket, dramatically increasing the muzzle velocity compared to standard ammunition. Controlled tests revealed the HVAP round could penetrate 180 mm of armor at 500 meters when striking at optimal angles, sufficient to defeat the frontal armor of a Panther and even potentially penetrate the Tiger I at combat ranges. This performance fundamentally undermined the German armor doctrine that had emphasized protection over mobility, revealing that even their most heavily armored operational tanks now faced genuine vulnerability to American medium tanks equipped with these specialized rounds. The tungsten carbide core of the HVAP round particularly interested German ordnance experts, who recognized the strategic material advantage it represented. Germany's own tungsten core ammunition production had been severely curtailed due to critical material shortages, while American production appeared to be increasing, a stark testament to the resource disparity between the two nations. Following initial technical evaluation, Panzer Auswertungsabteilung 11 took the captured and repaired Sherman on an extensive tour to operational Panzer units across Germany during late 1944, visiting numerous locations where frontline armored units were refitting or training. At each stop, the unit would establish temporary operations and conduct comprehensive demonstrations, showing German tank crews exactly what they would face in combat and teaching specific tactics to counter American strengths while exploiting whatever weaknesses could be identified. The demonstrations typically began with the captured Sherman driving past assembled German tank crews, creating surreal scenes as the American vehicle bearing German evaluation markings maneuvered among Panzers. Seeing this vehicle up close had substantial psychological impact, transforming the enemy from abstract threat to concrete reality that could be touched, examined, and understood. Next came mobility demonstrations, where experienced German test drivers would put the Sherman through a series of mobility trials, demonstrating its speed, acceleration, obstacle crossing capability, and maneuverability. These practical demonstrations proved far more effective than written reports or verbal briefings in conveying the Sherman's true capabilities. For the E8 Easy 8 demonstrations, test drivers would perform high-speed runs across rough terrain to show the vehicle's excellent cross-country mobility and suspension performance. They would navigate obstacle courses to demonstrate climbing ability and trench crossing capability that frequently surprised German crews expecting inferior performance. They would demonstrate the Sherman's neutral steering capability and comparatively tight turning radius that provided tactical advantages in confined spaces. After the driving demonstrations concluded, crews could approach the vehicle on the ground, examine it closely, inspect the interior layout and crew positions, and ask detailed questions of the evaluation team who had extensive experience with the captured machine. These hands-on educational sessions proved invaluable for demystifying American tanks and providing concrete understanding of what German crews faced in actual combat operations. The most valuable component of these field demonstrations involved comparative testing, where the captured Sherman would operate alongside German tanks through identical courses and challenges, allowing direct side-by-side comparison of mobility, crew effectiveness, and tactical capabilities. These practical demonstrations frequently contradicted official information about American equipment limitations, forcing German commanders to reassess tactical doctrines based on direct observation rather than wishful thinking. One such demonstration took place at a training area hosting Panzer Lehr Division during late 1944 as Allied armies advanced toward the German border. The division commander had arranged for several experienced crews to participate in comparative trials against the captured Sherman to develop effective tactical countermeasures they could disseminate throughout the unit. The German test driver operating the Sherman demonstrated tactics that American crews typically employed in combat, using the vehicle's excellent mobility and stabilized gun to maintain distance from heavier German tanks while maneuvering for flank shots. German crews in Panthers and Panzer IVs attempted to engage using standard Panzer tactics that had proven effective against earlier Sherman variants. Quickly discovering the E8's superior mobility complicated their preferred engagement patterns. When German crews attempted to use their superior frontal armor to close distance for killing shots, the Sherman would use its comparable speed and better cross-country mobility to maintain separation, circling to attack more vulnerable side armor. When German tanks tried to use their superior main guns to engage at long range, the Sherman would use terrain features and smoke to close distance rapidly, where its 76mm gun with HVAP ammunition could penetrate even frontal armor of most German tanks. The mock combat sessions proved sobering for German crews, who had believed or hoped their tanks and established tactics remained competitive with newer American equipment, despite the deteriorating strategic situation. Directly experiencing the Sherman's capabilities in dynamic maneuvering demonstrated clearly that American tankers operating late-model Shermans with upgraded guns and ammunition possessed significant tactical advantages that required fundamental reassessment of German armored doctrine. This pattern of revelation and gradually dawning realization repeated across numerous Panzer units, where Panzer Auswertungsabteilung 11 conducted demonstrations during late 1944 into 1945. German crews received official assurances about continuing German technical superiority during pre-demonstration briefings, then experienced actual comparative trials that directly contradicted those optimistic assessments. The captured tank demonstrations provided concrete, undeniable evidence that German armor faced increasingly capable opponents whose technical specifications and combat effectiveness significantly exceeded what propaganda and official communications acknowledged. The implications extended well beyond immediate tactical considerations to fundamental questions about German industrial capacity, access to strategic resources, and ultimate ability to sustain mechanized warfare against opponents with such overwhelming material advantages. Walter Spielberger, who commanded a Panzer company during 1944, later wrote about visits from Panzer Auswertungsabteilung 11 to his unit's training area, though historians note his accounts require careful evaluation due to post-war embellishment issues. He described how captured American tanks would arrive alongside captured ammunition samples, creating unusual scenes where enemy equipment was examined methodically by the same crews who would soon face these vehicles in combat. Company commanders and senior NCOs received passos, opportunities to operate captured vehicles in controlled exercises, allowing them to understand American tank characteristics through direct personal experience rather than relying on second-hand reports that often reflected individual bias or limited observation under chaotic combat conditions. Spielberger emphasized the substantial value of this hands-on training, noting that familiarity with enemy tank capabilities represented a critical factor in armored combat where split-second decisions often determined survival. Following these demonstration sessions, company commanders would conduct detailed tactical briefings with their crews, passing along specific recommendations and insights based on their personal observations and direct experience with captured American vehicles. This systematic knowledge transfer helped prepare German crews for combat encounters with more realistic understanding of both Allied strengths and the increasingly limited circumstances under which German tanks retained exploitable advantages. The program achieved decidedly mixed results by late 1944 as Germany's strategic situation deteriorated across all fronts. While the demonstrations unquestionably provided valuable tactical intelligence and improved German understanding of American tank capabilities, this knowledge could not overcome the fundamental and growing disadvantages German forces faced. The Wehrmacht suffered from chronic and worsening fuel shortages that severely limited training opportunities for new crews, resulting in inadequately prepared personnel being sent into combat with minimal practical experience. Experienced Panzer crews who understood through hard-won combat experience how to fight effectively against increasingly capable American tanks were increasingly rare, lost to relentless attrition during the brutal armoured engagements of 1944 that saw German tank losses reach unsustainable levels. Tank production, while remaining surprisingly resilient despite intense Allied bombing of German industry, could not replace losses quickly enough to maintain force strength. Most critically, the tactical revelations from captured tank evaluations often served primarily to demoralize rather than inspire, as crews realized the full extent of their disadvantages. German tankers recognized with growing clarity that they operated vehicles that, despite their fearsome reputation and undeniable engineering achievements, faced increasingly unfavorable combat conditions against rapidly improving American equipment operated by increasingly experienced crews. The Sherman's mobility advantage, improving firepower, and overwhelming numerical superiority could not be matched by any available German tanks in operational service. The technical intelligence gathered from Mitchell's captured Sherman extended well beyond simple field testing and combat evaluation. German engineers at both Kummersdorf and Hillersleben systematically disassembled tank components to understand American manufacturing techniques, material selections, and detailed design approaches. They examined the hull construction and armor composition in meticulous detail, studying the manufacturing methods and attempting to understand precisely how American designers had achieved such a balanced combination of protection, mobility, and combat effectiveness. They analyzed the Ford GAA engine with great interest, noting its robust design that prioritized reliability and ease of maintenance over absolute efficiency or power density. The transmission and final drive systems received careful attention as engineers attempted to understand how American designers had achieved such reliable power transfer systems compared to the increasingly problematic German equivalents. The 76mm gun and fire control system were evaluated for their effectiveness and relative simplicity compared to German systems. German engineers noted repeatedly the consistently high quality of materials used throughout the vehicle. American access to strategic materials like high-grade aluminum alloys, manganese, chrome, and reliable rubber compounds allowed designers to create systems that effectively combined strength with acceptable weight while maintaining production efficiency. Germany faced increasingly severe material shortages by 1944, forcing the use of substitute materials that often proved inferior in strength, durability, or manufacturing characteristics. The investigation of captured Shermans revealed sophisticated manufacturing techniques that enabled true mass production without significantly compromising quality standards. American factories produced Shermans using highly developed assembly line methods that maintained remarkably tight tolerances and consistent quality across thousands of individual vehicles. German production had become increasingly reliant on dispersed manufacturing in smaller facilities, scattered across the country to avoid concentrated bombing, sometimes using inadequately trained forced labor, resulting in inconsistent quality and increasing maintenance problems with operational vehicles. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The captured Sherman, designated as Evaluation Vehicle K-11, served with Panzer Auswertungsabteilung 11 until March 3, 1945, when the vehicle was destroyed during an Allied air raid that struck the railway transport, carrying it between demonstration locations. By that point in its second operational life, the tank had travelled extensively across Germany, visiting numerous Wehrmacht training facilities and providing direct hands-on education to hundreds of German tank crews. Other captured Shermans served similar evaluation and demonstration roles for the Wehrmacht. German records indicate that at least 9 Sherman variants definitely operated with various technical evaluation units at different times. During 1944 and early 1945, representing different models from the M4A1 through the M4A3E8. Historical documentation sometimes incorrectly lists additional captured American tanks, but careful research reveals that many of these were actually British or Soviet vehicles, not American Shermans. Documentation indicates that one captured E8 Sherman was used at Grafenwöhr training area to familiarize Hungarian and Romanian armored units with American capabilities and develop counter-tactics. This transfer of tactical knowledge to German allies reflected recognition that the newer Sherman variants represented a significant and growing threat, requiring specialized counter-tactics that needed dissemination beyond German forces alone. The training emphasized exploiting the few remaining advantages that German and Allied Axis tanks retained, such as the superior long-range accuracy of the 75mm KUK-42 gun on the Panther and the exceptionally heavy frontal armor of the Tiger series. Above all, training stressed avoiding close-range engagement with 76mm armed Shermans that might be carrying HVAP ammunition capable of penetrating even the frontal armor of Panthers and potentially Tigers under the right conditions. The broader implications of German crews directly experiencing and thoroughly understanding improved American tanks extended well beyond immediate tactical considerations. The Sherman, particularly late variants with upgraded guns and ammunition, represented tangible, undeniable evidence that American industrial and engineering capabilities equaled or exceeded German achievements in critical areas, contradicting years of propaganda about American technical inferiority. This uncomfortable realization challenged fundamental assumptions about relative national capabilities and contributed significantly to declining morale among German tank crews who increasingly understood they fought at a severe and growing disadvantage that no amount of skill, courage, or tactical cleverness could fully overcome. The material quality and production volume particularly troubled German commanders because they clearly recognized the decisive strategic implications. The armored war in Western Europe, which had seemed potentially containable when American tanks possessed 75mm guns that struggled to penetrate German medium tanks frontally, became effectively hopeless once HVAP ammunition demonstrated capability to defeat even the heaviest German armor under combat conditions. German tanks could no longer rely on frontal armor protection that had previously allowed them to establish hull-down firing positions with relative impunity. Every engagement now carried significant risk, regardless of tactical positioning, dramatically increasing the psychological pressure on German crews already struggling with critical fuel shortages, maintenance issues, and overwhelming Allied numerical superiority. Production numbers told a devastating story about relative industrial capacity. By late 1944, American factories were producing approximately 2,000 tanks monthly, far exceeding Germany's peak production of 1,800 tanks monthly in 1944, which rapidly declined as strategic bombing intensified and material shortages worsened. This overwhelming numerical advantage meant that even if German tanks maintained a favorable exchange ratio in combat, they would inevitably be overwhelmed through sheer attrition. Moreover, American tanks emerged from factories equipped with reliable engines, standardized components, consistently manufactured ammunition, and radio equipment that functioned reliably, unlike the increasingly problematic equipment in late-war German vehicles struggling with material substitutions and quality control issues. American crews operated tanks that had been properly maintained by well-trained support personnel with adequate supplies of genuine spare parts, proper tools, and comprehensive technical manuals, while German forces struggled with increasingly severe maintenance challenges created by parts shortages, substitute materials, undertrained personnel, and dispersed maintenance facilities. The quality and thoroughness of American crew training also became increasingly apparent through combat encounters analyzed by surviving German tank commanders. American crews typically arrived at operational units with extensive practical training, including substantial driving experience, gunnery practice with live ammunition, and tactical training emphasizing teamwork and initiative. German crew training had been dramatically shortened by late 1944 due to severe fuel shortages and the loss of training facilities. New crews sometimes arrived at frontline units with barely 10 hours of actual vehicle operation experience, minimal gunnery training, and often no tactical instruction whatsoever, leaving them dangerously unprepared for the reality of armored combat operations. These inadequately trained crews faced veteran American tankers operating increasingly capable vehicles, a combination that produced predictable results reflected in German loss statistics. German loss rates among tank crews increased dramatically during 1944 and early 1945. Experienced crews who understood through hard-won combat experience how to maximize their vehicles' remaining strengths while minimizing exposure to enemy advantages were killed or wounded faster than replacement crews could be trained. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. New crews with minimal training survived only a handful of engagements on average before being knocked out, escaping if they were fortunate, dying if they were not. The Wehrmacht was losing its most valuable asset, skilled, experienced tank crews with the knowledge and judgment necessary for survival and combat effectiveness, at rates that could not trained Panthers possibly be sustained. The Panzer Auswertungsabteilung 11 demonstrations revealed these harsh realities directly to German crews before they encountered them in actual combat, where the stakes were life and death. While this advanced preparation theoretically improved their chances of survival by providing realistic understanding of what they would face, it simultaneously made painfully clear the deteriorating situation German forces faced across all dimensions of armoured warfare. Crews who had directly examined the Sherman's upgraded 76mm gun with HVAP ammunition and understood its penetration capabilities confronted uncomfortable clarity that they would face opponents with the ability to defeat even the heaviest German armour under combat conditions. This knowledge, while possessing some tactical value, contributed substantially to the severe psychological pressure German crews experienced during late 1944 and early 1945, as strategic reality became impossible to ignore. Some German evaluation specialists who extensively tested captured Shermans through multiple trials developed grudging professional respect for American engineering pragmatism and design philosophy, despite their position as enemies. They recognized through direct experience that the Sherman represented a coherent, well-integrated design that intelligently prioritized the characteristics most valuable for its intended strategic mission of combined arms breakthrough operations and exploitation. The vehicle deliberately sacrificed some characteristics like absolute armor protection and gun penetration that might have been optimized for tank versus tank combat in favor of reliability, mechanical simplicity, ease of production, and crew survivability that enabled it to sustain offensive operations over extended distances and timeframes. This represented sound engineering judgment that selected appropriate design compromises to achieve clearly defined mission objectives rather than pursuing theoretical performance maxima that didn't serve actual operational requirements. The Sherman's ease of production also impressed German engineers who understood manufacturing challenges intimately through their own experiences. The vehicle's design facilitated true mass production through standardized components that reduced complexity and training requirements, and design features that deliberately simplified assembly operations. American factories could produce Shermans in vast numbers while maintaining consistently high quality, because the fundamental design itself accommodated production requirements from the beginning rather than treating manufacturing as an afterthought. German tank designs often prioritized absolute performance over manufacturability, resulting in vehicles that were difficult and time-consuming to produce even under optimal conditions, much less in the deteriorating circumstances of late-war Germany. The Ford GA engine that powered Mitchell's M4A3E8 and other late-production Shermans represented another critical area where American capabilities impressed German evaluators. The engine was purpose-designed for tank applications, delivering 500 horsepower from a compact, relatively lightweight package that provided excellent power-to-weight ratio while maintaining good reliability under field conditions. Ford Motor Company successfully manufactured these engines in massive quantities with remarkably consistent quality, enabling American tank formations to maintain high operational readiness rates even during extended offensive operations. By contrast, German tank engines like the Maybach HL 230 suffered from increasing quality problems during 1944, as severe material shortages forced the use of substitute materials and dispersed production significantly reduced quality. Control effectiveness. The psychological impact on German tank crews who thoroughly understood through direct experience the capability gap they faced cannot be overstated or dismissed as mere morale problems. These men had entered the war confident in their superior training, the capabilities of their vehicles, and the effectiveness of their tactical doctrines. By late 1944, extensive combat experience and direct exposure to captured American tanks had systematically eroded that confidence. They recognized with painful clarity that they fought opponents who possessed increasingly capable equipment, overwhelming numerical superiority, better logistics support, more thorough training, and superior industrial capacity. Operating under these conditions required extraordinary courage that bordered on fatalism and acceptance of likely death or severe injury. Former Wehrmacht tanker accounts and post-war interviews from this period frequently describe the hopeless feeling of watching American tank formations appear on the horizon and knowing intellectually that those Shermans could not be defeated through any tactical maneuver due to overwhelming numbers, even if individual German tanks remained qualitatively competitive. German crews understood that engaging Shermans equipped with HVAP ammunition meant fighting with the knowledge that even their heaviest armor no longer guaranteed protection, eliminating the psychological security that had previously sustained crews operating vehicles like the Tiger. Declining to engage meant allowing American armored thrusts to penetrate deeper into German territory, accelerating Germany's military collapse. Neither option offered acceptable outcomes from a professional military perspective. Yet, these were the stark choices German tank crews faced daily during the final year of the war. As their strategic situation deteriorated beyond any possibility of reversal, Panzer Auswertungsabteilung 11 continued operating into early 1945, conducting demonstrations with various captured vehicles, as long as fuel remained available, and operational training areas could be maintained against Allied ground advances from both east and west. As Allied forces advanced progressively deeper into Germany from multiple directions, the unit's ability to travel safely between evaluation facilities and training areas diminished steadily. Eventually, the program necessarily ceased operations as the general collapse of German military organization overtook even specialized units that had previously received priority for scarce resources. The ultimate fate of various captured Shermans operated by German forces remains unclear or unknown in several cases due to incomplete records and the chaos of Germany's final collapse. Some captured vehicles were certainly destroyed during Allied air raids against German transport infrastructure. Others may have been deliberately destroyed by retreating German forces to prevent recapture. A few possibly survived until war's end and were subsequently recovered by advancing Allied forces, though detailed records of specific vehicles remain limited or lost. The knowledge gained from systematically testing captured Shermans provided German crews with valuable tactical intelligence about vehicle capabilities, optimal engagement parameters, and exploitable weaknesses. But this knowledge ultimately could not overcome the fundamental and overwhelming disadvantages the Wehrmacht faced by 1944. Understanding intellectually that the Sherman with HVAP ammunition could penetrate German armor at combat ranges offered limited practical benefit when German crews still had to engage these increasingly capable vehicles in defense of German territory under direct orders. The testing and demonstration program represented a sophisticated attempt to counter Allied advantages through tactical innovation and improved crew knowledge. But tactics and knowledge alone could not compensate for increasing American technical capability, severe numerical disadvantage, inadequate training due to fuel shortages, and chronic shortages of spare parts and maintenance personnel. Mitchell's M4A3E8 Sherman, serial number 3073294, had an extraordinary afterlife following its abandonment near Bastogne. From a damaged tank in a Belgian forest, it became an instrument of revelation for German tank crews, concretely demonstrating American capabilities and forcing acknowledgement of Allied armored advances that no amount of propaganda could overcome. The vehicle served this important educational role until its destruction in March 1945, Having travelled extensively across Germany and provided hands-on experience and sobering realistic assessment to hundreds of Wehrmacht personnel, the story of captured Shermans in German service illustrates the sophisticated and professional approach the Wehrmacht took toward understanding enemy capabilities, despite Germany's deteriorating strategic position. Rather than relying solely on fragmentary combat reports and intelligence assessments of uncertain reliability, German forces invested significant resources in recovering, repairing, and systematically testing captured Allied vehicles under controlled conditions. This systematic approach to technical intelligence gathering represented best practices for military organizations seeking to understand opponent capabilities accurately, and it continued even as Germany's strategic situation became increasingly hopeless. The Panzer Auswertungsabteilung 11 program demonstrated that even sophisticated intelligence gathering, professional competence, and systematic analysis could not overcome fundamental material and strategic disadvantages of the magnitude Germany faced. German crews who examined captured Shermans gained valuable knowledge about vehicle characteristics and optimal tactics, but that hard-won knowledge primarily confirmed what many already suspected or understood through combat experience. American tanks possessed increasingly decisive capabilities that German industry and engineering could not match. During the war's final years, given resource, constraints and strategic circumstances, the experience of German evaluation specialists confronting the Sherman's capabilities and coming to terms with American engineering achievement parallels the broader German military experience during World War II's latter stages, across all branches and services. Initial confidence in German technological superiority and tactical innovation gradually gave way to recognition that Allied forces possessed decisive advantages in multiple critical areas: vast industrial capacity, access to strategic resources, enormous manpower reserves, and increasingly sophisticated technological capabilities that matched or exceeded German achievements. The Sherman represented one particularly visible manifestation of these Allied advantages. American designers had created a vehicle that excelled at its intended strategic mission of mobile warfare at operational depths. American industry produced it in enormous numbers with consistent quality. American training programs prepared crews thoroughly to extract maximum performance from the vehicle in combat. German forces could study, analyze, and appreciate these advantages through programs like Panzer Auswertungsabteilung 11, without being able to replicate or effectively counter them, given the strategic and material constraints they faced. The technical capabilities of the late-model Sherman challenged and ultimately demolished German assumptions about American engineering capabilities that had been carefully cultivated by propaganda. Official information had portrayed Americans as capable of producing simple, rugged equipment in vast quantities, but fundamentally incapable of sophisticated design, requiring engineering excellence. The 76mm HVAP ammunition demonstrated conclusively that American engineers could create highly refined, specialized designs that matched or exceeded German capabilities in areas that mattered strategically. The tungsten cord projectile represented advanced, metallurgical research successfully implemented in high-volume production. The Ford GAA engine demonstrated American capability to design and manufacture purpose-built tank power plants in large quantities with consistent quality. The vehicle's systems integration reflected sophisticated engineering that successfully balanced multiple competing requirements to create a coherent, effective weapon system optimized for its intended mission. German crews who examined captured Shermans extensively could not honestly dismiss American engineering as crude or unsophisticated based on propaganda. They experienced firsthand a vehicle that delivered excellent mobility, increasingly lethal firepower, and remarkable reliability across extended operations, a combination that proved decisively effective in actual combat operations. This direct experience forced acknowledgement that American technical capabilities exceeded German preconceptions significantly, with implications extending beyond tank design to broader questions about relative national capabilities in industrial production, technical education, and engineering sophistication. The psychological impact on German tank forces cannot be overstated. Crew morale suffered severe deterioration during 1944–45, as the reality of their situation became increasingly apparent through both direct combat experience and technical evaluation programs, like Panzer Auswertungsabteilung 11. While German propaganda continued presenting optimistic assessments and promising wonder weapons that would reverse the strategic situation, frontline crews who had directly examined, captured American equipment and experienced its capabilities firsthand, recognized the growing disparity between official communications and battlefield reality. This divergence between propaganda and observable reality created a credibility gap that further undermined German morale and fighting effectiveness during the war's final stages. Crews who no longer trusted official information about enemy capabilities became increasingly reluctant to accept the extraordinary risks combat operations entailed, particularly when they recognized how severely the odds were stacked against them. The evaluation program's most valuable contribution may have been forcing German commanders to confront reality directly rather than relying on wishful thinking or propaganda. By providing undeniable evidence of American technical progress and industrial capability, programs like Panzer Auswertungsabteilung 11 compelled at least some German leaders to recognize their strategic situation clearly and make decisions based on actual conditions rather than ideological fantasies. This clarity, while arriving too late to alter the war's outcome, potentially saved lives by encouraging more realistic operational planning and tactical approaches during Germany's final defensive battles. For Mitchell's Sherman, the journey from American production line to German test facility and finally destruction during an Allied air raid represented a complete circle that demonstrated the fundamental reality of the European war by early 1945. Overwhelming Allied material superiority that German technical excellence, tactical skill, and individual courage could delay but not ultimately prevent. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.